With countless cars on the road, everyone has models they adore and those they can't help but loathe. When a car aligns with our tastes, it becomes an instant classic. But when it doesn't, it's destined for the Hall of Shame, ridiculed and reviled by car enthusiasts everywhere. The 1960s, despite being an iconic era for automotive design, had its fair share of duds. Vehicles so terrible they made car lovers scream in frustration. From designs that looked like they were dreamed up by kids to safety features that were more boom than safe, these automotive disasters are relics no one's itching to bring back. Buckle up as we dive into the worst of the worst. Number 10. Chevrolet Corvair, 1960 to 1969. Now, that car actually looks amazing from outside, but don't be fooled by the beautiful outside design. While the Chevy Corvair resembled a proper cruiser from the 1960s, it's remembered as one of the hated American automobiles of the decade. This was primarily due to its unusual engine configuration. A rear engine arrangement can help handling in a tiny sports vehicle, but not in a large compact car. The Corvair immediately gained notoriety for its poor handling and performance. Owners were unaccustomed to badly balanced rear-engine vehicles, and it showed. GM faced over 100 lawsuits from dissatisfied customers. The Corvair gained notoriety after Ralph Nader's book, Unsafe at Any Speed, brought attention to its tendency to oversteer and roll over. It was because of its rear-engine, rear-wheel drive design and the absence of a stabilizer bar in the early models. That's not it. The car's swing-axle rear suspension, combined with its rear-engine design, caused unpredictable handling, especially during sharp turns or sudden maneuvers. This made the Corvair difficult for many drivers to control. These particular reasons sparked major safety concerns and a strong public backlash. Number 9. Ford Edsel, 1958 to 1960. The Ford Edsel, America's greatest vehicle failure and a lesson in don't judge a book by its cover. It was Ford's great bet to transform the automobile world when it was released in 1958, but it ended up becoming the punchline of countless jokes. The Edsel's styling, particularly its controversial horse collar grille, was widely criticized for being awkward and unattractive. Many people found the design off-putting, which hurt its appeal. The Edsel suffered from numerous mechanical problems, including faulty electronics and unreliable parts. These issues plagued early models, resulting in frequent breakdowns and dissatisfied customers. Well, what about sales? By the early 1960s, the Edsel's reputation had plummeted to the point where it could easily be found on not wanted lists. The Edsel is a pinnacle of ambitious architecture gone comically wrong, a rolling reminder that even the grandest ideas may fail spectacularly. If you want to see what happens when big dreams clash with reality, just look at the Edsel. It's a classic car failure with a lesson to learn. Number 8. The Subaru 360. It was small, light, and perfect for city driving. Malcolm Bricklin, an American businessman with big ideas, thought this tiny car would be a game changer in the U.S. market. Starting in 1968, he began importing the 360 to North America, confident it would win over American drivers. The car was so light that it didn't even have to meet U.S. automotive safety standards. On paper, it seemed like a brilliant plan, right? But here's where things took a dark turn. American buyers didn't quite see the charm in this pint-sized car. It was small, underpowered, and didn't match up to the larger, more powerful vehicles Americans were used to. Despite its success in Japan, the Subaru 360 just couldn't capture the hearts of American drivers. Sales were sluggish, and by 1970, it quietly exited the market. So what went wrong? Was it too ahead of its time, or just too different for American tastes? The Subaru 360 serves as a reminder that what works in one market doesn't always translate to another. Have you ever seen one of these tiny cars on the road in 2024? Number 7. Chevrolet Chevy 2 Nova, 1962 to 1964. Let's talk about the Chevrolet Chevy 2 Nova. It was a vehicle with all the appeal of a beige wall, but none of the flair. The Chevy 2 Nova, introduced in 1962, was Chevy's major push into the tiny automobile market, with the goal of becoming the average person's daily driver. Doesn't that sound great? Except the Nova was exciting as a tax form. It's the early 1960s, and you're driving a car that appears to have been designed over an especially uninspired lunch break. The Nova's design was as exciting as a plain bagel. But what about under the hood? If you were seeking excitement, you'd be better off watching paint dry. The Nova didn't gain popularity until later versions. But what went wrong? The early Chevy 2 Nova was designed as an economical, no-frills compact car. Its simple, utilitarian design lacked the style and flair of other cars from the era, making it less appealing to buyers looking for something more exciting. The initial engine options were underwhelming, with the base models featuring a 90-horsepower inline-4 engine. This lack of power made the car feel sluggish, especially when compared to muscle cars that were gaining popularity at the time. Number 6. 1968 Ambassador. Yes, that was the first American car to offer air conditioning. It was supposed to be a game changer for American Motors Corporation. With its classic design and innovative features, AMC hoped it would be a huge hit. But sometimes things don't go as planned. Why did this promising car become more of a burden than a breakthrough? When it was released, the Ambassador faced harsh criticism. Consumer Reports gave it a not acceptable rating, pointing out serious flaws in its engineering. This was a major blow. How could a car meant to lead AMC into the future end up hurting its reputation so badly? The negative review didn't just dent sales, it crushed them. Buyers were understandably wary of investing in a car with such poor reviews. As a result, AMC's standing as an independent automaker took a nosedive. The Ambassador, rather than being a symbol of innovation, became a symbol of failure. Number 5. The 1967 Renault. Renault 10 was once the talk of the town in the US. It was a hit because of its rear-mounted engine and air conditioning, especially for those looking for something a little bit different. But then came the 1967 model, and suddenly that excitement turned into disappointment. People were eagerly awaiting the next big thing from Renault, expecting the 1967 model to build on the success of its predecessor. Instead of innovation, they got a slew of problems. Drivers found the car difficult to handle, making even simple drives feel like a challenge. And the braking issues? Those were a major concern. Imagine driving a car that doesn't stop as it should. That's what buyers faced. The 1967 Renault 10 didn't just fail to live up to expectations. It was seen as a step backward. What had once been a promising series now seemed like it lost its way. It's a reminder that even a company riding high on success can stumble if they don't keep up with customer expectations. Do you think Renault could have saved the 1967 model if they'd addressed these issues sooner? What would have happened if the 1967 Renault 10 had been a hit instead of a miss? Number 4. Plymouth Valiant, 1960 to 1962. This classic car tried to be everyone's friend but became the automotive world's high school dropout. It's 1960, and Plymouth introduces the Valiant, hoping to wow with a revolutionary design and innovative features. Instead, it impressed primarily with its propensity to rust more quickly than a teenager's zeal for summer homework. First, there was the notorious push-button transmission. Sounds futuristic, right? It was more like pushing your luck. Drivers frequently found themselves in the middle of intersections, perplexed as to why their Valiant chose to remain neutral. A question of, why me? Rather than advanced engineering. Add to it the disappointing engine performance. With only a 3.7-liter inline-6 engine, it seemed like driving a shopping cart with illusions of grandeur. And don't forget the car's tendency to develop mechanical problems faster than you can say, I should have bought a Chevy. Early Valiant models were prone to rust, particularly in the body panels and undercarriage. This led to long-term durability issues, especially in regions with harsh winters or high humidity. In the end, the Plymouth Valiant was like the child who tried too hard to fit in, but never quite got the grade. Number 3. Mercury Comet, 1960 to 1969. It's a car that often gets overlooked, and for good reason. The Comet was frequently seen as the lesser sibling of Ford's more popular models. But have you ever wondered why it never quite caught on like its counterparts? The Comet had a conservative design that didn't exactly turn heads. In an era where cars were becoming symbols of style and power, the Comet seemed stuck in the past. It didn't have the bold looks or the performance to match the muscle cars that were gaining popularity at the time. It was criticized for being too plain, too average. Just another car in a market that was looking for excitement. But what really sealed its fate was its performance. The Comet was just okay. And in the competitive world of the 1960s, just okay wasn't enough. Buyers wanted more power, more speed, and more flair. But unfortunately, the Comet didn't deliver. It was often overshadowed by Ford's own models, like the Falcon and Mustang, which offered more of what people were looking for. Number 2. Pontiac Tempest. The Pontiac Tempest. Talk about a car that couldn't get a break. The Tempest, introduced in the early 1960s, was Pontiac's attempt to provide a fashionable yet economical vehicle. Unfortunately, it lacked style and excitement. Its design was about as exciting as a beige wall. It lacked any distinguishing traits that would set it apart. Under the hood, the Tempest fared a little better. It had a variety of engine options, but none of them were very spectacular in terms of performance. Driving a Tempest felt like visiting a party where everyone forgot to bring joy. The handling was ordinary, and the power was not particularly impressive. Over time, the Tempest became associated with mediocrity, and many drivers saw it as a forgettable face in a crowd rather than a car to be enthusiastic about. In a sea of 60s muscle and style icons, the Tempest went mostly undetected, making it one of those cars that, honestly, most people are glad to leave behind. Number 1. Buick Riviera, 1963 to 1965. While some might admire its design today, back in the day it was one of the most criticized cars on the road. But why did this once promising luxury car end up being so disliked? The Riviera was meant to be a statement, a personal luxury car that combined elegance with performance. But here's the catch. It was often seen as too big and bulky, lacking the sporty edge that buyers in the luxury market were looking for. Buyers who were looking for something with a bit more pep were left disappointed. The Riviera didn't have the nimble, sporty feel that cars like the Ford Thunderbird or the Pontiac Grand Prix offered. It was a luxury car, sure, but it didn't deliver the kind of driving excitement that many expected from a car in its class. So, why was the Buick Riviera from this era so hated? It was too large and not dynamic enough to compete with the other personal luxury cars of the time. Do you think the Riviera could have been a success if Buick had focused on either luxury or sportiness instead of trying to blend both? Or was it doomed from the start by trying to be something it wasn't? We leave these questions for you to answer in the comment box below. Well, if you liked the video, make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon for the latest episodes.